right, let's take a look now at this particular story. South Africa's aging infrastructure is posing serious difficulties when it comes to the reliability of water and in ensuring that a lot more communities have access to safe drinking water. Now, some water experts, of course, have sounded the alarm and say that the situation needs to be dealt with as a matter of urgency. Now, this is happening as the UN holds its conference on global water crisis. Let's talk more on this now with the UFS Center for Environmental Management, Professor Anthony Turton, who joins us live now. Prof, thank you so much for your time. There's talk of a strong possibility of a day zero in Gauteng in the next few years. Some areas already having experienced their own day zero, infrastructure issues that we are also dealing with here in South Africa. Would you say we're at crisis level?
Yes, we've been in the crisis situation in the water sector for some time now. And when I say crisis, I refer to the fact that the simple truth is that demand exceeds supply in South Africa. And we cannot easily just increase the supply of water because we just don't have enough of it. So that's the reality in South Africa. And of course, the fact that we've got load shedding on top of it all just exacerbates the problem. But the simple reality is that we are a fundamentally water constrained economy. The majority of our population in the economically active areas lives up in the high veld of the Gauteng area. Water has to be pumped uphill using electricity to get there. It is a fundamentally water constrained area. And until such time as we recognize this, we are not going to be able to just magically come up with some solution to make it go away by some political decision. This is a technical problem, not a political problem.
And how bad can it be, especially if, we continue to experience the rolling blackouts as we have been, and they've been so severe when you look at what has been happening in recent times?
Yes, you must appreciate that these are complex engineered systems. They take many, many years of planning. In fact, they evolve over time, decades and if not centuries of time. So the demand for water has continued to grow as more and more people have settled up in the high veld area, in the Gauteng area. The reality is that Rand Water cannot supply any more water because it's at the limit of its water use license. And I know that people are saying, but right now the dams are full. Why can't Rand Water just get more water in its water use license? Well, unfortunately, we have to plan on long-term cycles, of which the current flooding is just really a short-term moment in time. The long-term reality is that we've got to plan for the low flows, which are the drought periods of time. And that's simply how it works. And even if we could magically allow Rand Water to suddenly increase its abstraction, the pipes are not sized for the increased flows. And then we get to the situation where, because of the lack of planning in your large urban centres, your metros, your Tshwanis and your Johannesburgs, then there's insufficient storage capacity within the system to give any buffer. And without that storage capacity now, all it takes is a period of load shedding when the pumps can't work, and suddenly you run out of your internal storage. So I'm afraid we really are sitting on the cusp of I almost would say a chaotic breakdown of the system. I don't want to sound alarmist, but we really are not talking about a crisis. We are deeply in that crisis at the moment.
Especially when you look at the fact that, even the Department of Water and Sanitation talking about how it's, failing to provide that 4,500 megalitres of water that's required in Gauteng, daily. But let's look at the issue of infrastructure, because a lot of people always talk about this particular conversation. But you look at the fact that we're still losing water to, some leaks. We still are talking about aging infrastructure. We still continue to deal with this particular problem. But is it really being dealt with in the manner that it's supposed to be, to ensure that we avert a potential crisis that could, be further worsened than the one we are in right now?
It's okay. So the leaks is a very interesting story. Let's unpack that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
So we can take as a ballpark figure that we are losing between 40 and 45% of the water that goes into the system is simply being unaccounted for. It's being lost in some way or other. So even if we had to increase the volume throughput there, we're simply feeding the leaks. We're not getting it out to the end. That's the first part of the problem. The second part of the problem is now, because the water is leaking, it has to be paid for when it's purchased from the bulk service provider, but the money is not recovered when it's sold off to the final user. So therefore, the bulk water provider, in this case Rand Water, is not being paid by the municipalities. So the debt is growing, and that is putting more and more pressure on Rand Water and other water boards in the country to sustain it. So we start getting into these spiraling situations where one thing feeds into another. And of course, we've also got this, the culture of non-payment in South Africa. And we start getting to this really, very, very, very difficult problem to pull out of. Then on top of that all, we've got the situation where we've had these ill-conceived policies put in place. One of them was a program called War on Leaks.
Yeah.
When the War on Leaks was supposed to train plumbers to fix up systems, but it didn't really give them proper real training that they needed. They think they're plumbers, they believe they're plumbers, but all they do is they go and patch up a pipe somewhere, but typically in an unprofessional way. And that, once again, leads to an acceleration of the breakdown of the system. So we start seeing one catastrophic thing feeding into another and eventually leading to this domino effect failure that we're seeing.
Pardon me for coming in there, Prof. So are these leaks then, because I'm listening to you and of course it is worrying, so are these leaks that you and I can see physically the only ones, or are we talking about also leaks that could be underground that you and I can't see on a daily basis?
Oh, yes, there are many of those. In fact, one need look no further than parts of Tshwane, where you've got dolomite, where you've got sinkholes opening up, etc. Those sinkholes very often are directly related to underground leaks of water, underground leaks of piping, or else in the gutters, etc., draining into the ground and making the holes, the caverns in the system open up on an accelerated way. So, in other words, yes. All of these things are happening, and it's just getting worse. It's not getting better.
Sure. And Prof, you and I are having this conversation, and there is that UN Water Conference that is, of course, currently underway. A lot of people hopeful that we could see an improvement on the water situation across the world. Are you confident that we will after this?
Well, water is actually a good news story, because the simple reality is that water is an infinitely renewable resource. We have the same volume of water on the planet today as we had when the dinosaurs walked freely, and water can simply be recycled infinitely. So actually, we don't really have a water problem if you look at it that way. If we really want to unpack it, the problem is that we think of water as a single-use commodity and therefore finite. But it's not. Water is an infinite resource. It can be used an infinite number of times, and we've got to get our head around that thing. So it's actually a good news story if you're in the technology space. And ultimately, it comes down to the simple reality that the planetary population is growing at such a rate that it is outstripping its available of fresh water on the planet. But fresh water is less than 2% of all of the water on the planet. The rest of the water is ocean water, and we don't have a shortage of that water. And the technologies needed to take the salt out of that water are becoming more and more sophisticated by the day. So whether we like it or not, the future of the planet is increasingly going to be dependent on how we engineer solutions to remove pollution, whether it's salt from the sea, whether it's salt from acid mine water, or whether it's just the pollution, antibiotics, etc., that come back from sewage return flows. All of those things have to be removed. So we are locked in this technological race, and the technology is getting better. That's the good news. The missing link is the political will.
So, Prof, you owe me a day in your office to take me through all of this technological stuff. I'm going to hold you to that. Thank you so much for coming, for talking to us. But you do owe me a day. I'm interested in all of this, and we need to talk about it some more. Thank you for that. That was UFS Center for Environmental Management, Professor Anthony Turton, as we talk about this issue of water. An interesting take there that he has. And, of course, all of this is happening on the sidelines of that UN Water Conference, which we'll continue to bring you more of here on the show.